welcome to Data Driven. And let me play our little intro so I can justify yet another subscription that I have. All right. Thanks for tuning in to Data Driven. If you're watching this live, thank you for taking time out of your day. I realize this being the lead up to the holidays, things are kind of hectic. I know in Chateau Lavinia, things are very hectic today. Andy and I are happy to announce a new guest that we have with us. I first saw her on LinkedIn when she would do these really cool training videos on basically security topics. And with Black Friday, literally a week from now, Cyber Monday, and the creativity, alarmingly creative and flexibility of scammers that we've had in light of the COVID pandemic, et cetera, figured it'd be worth having kind of a good discussion about just the basics of cybersecurity and why it's important. My wife happens to be in the cybersecurity field, so I'd like to think that I'm better prepared, but I know if you think you're better prepared, that's probably a vulnerability. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Well, thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
So you are actually the first guest we're going to have on the show that we interviewed live on a live stream first on video.
Very honored to be here.
So awesome. We're trying to push the boundaries for season 4. So tell us a little bit about you and your company for those that haven't seen your videos on LinkedIn.
Okay, sure. Yeah, my name is Dana Mantilia, and I am the founder of Identity Protection Planning. And we try to help educate people in very layman's terms on how they can protect themselves from identity thieves and cyber criminals. And so we offer a variety of different kinds of training, either, training that's a webinar, some videos, or we have an online platform that's short little videos that everyone is required to watch, and just to kind of start spreading the word. I mean, cybersecurity is not going away. And unfortunately, the frontline workers are the people that really are maybe not educated on it. And they also are the ones that are clicking on things they shouldn't be clicking on.
So that's a good point. So one of your most recent videos, and this is the one that made me think we should have her on the show, was the gift card scam, and how somebody in your organization got snared up in this.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the way that I did that little video is exactly how it happened. She came to my office door with her coat on, and I said, "Well, why do you have your coat on?" And she said, "Oh, I'm going to get that stuff you need." And I said, "Well, what stuff are you talking about?" And she said, "The stuff we were just messaging back and forth about." And I said, I've been sitting here in my office just doing work. I didn't message you about anything." So then she showed me, and the person initially sent an email that looked like it was kind of from my email, very similar, which is always usually what they do. And then, the urgency factor, I always tell people when there's a sense of urgency, we have to stop and say, is this really a big emergency here to go buy gift cards? But people want to please their boss, so they get these emails and they act upon them. So then the person said, "Can you give me your email? Your cell phone. I want to text you this." So then the conversation jumped over to her cell phone, and now they're texting back and forth. And she said, "Well, how am I going to pay for these?" And he said, "Well, you know what? Just when you get to the store, read off the numbers in the back of the card, and then when you get back, I'll reimburse you." So it was just back and forth and back and forth. Anybody would have fallen for this, anybody.
Wow. The thing that struck me as the most insidious part is how they moved away from email pretty early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a data scientist, I hate giving out statistics, but let's say there was a 50-50 chance that person had your cell phone number.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good gambit for them, because I guess they didn't have your number already saved in their phone, so they could have this whole conversation with you.
Right. Yeah.
And I would assume that folks in your organization are well trained.
Well, we're at least talking about this stuff
right.
all the time. So
yeah.
That's the startling factor, is that we're talking about all these things all the time, and we totally almost just fell for it. So.
Well, I never disclosed this publicly until I'll do it now. Is that one time, Microsoft? I work for Microsoft. They pay the mortgage. They pay for the electricity that goes through the my little monitor display there. But they will routinely send out kind of phishing emails, and it'll be like urgent. You have to do this because your expense report or something like this. And I shouldn't admit this publicly, but I did. I was driving. I see this like emergency thing come through on like the screen, and I'm like, so I didn't think. I clicked on it, and it got a there should have been an animated GIF of like somebody at the company doing this, but it was like this. It was this like badge of shame of like, hey, you fell for this, and I was like, oh, crap. And I was like, I learned 2 lessons. One, pull over first. If I can't mouse over the link, probably shouldn't click on it.
Right.
And 3 is just that sense of urgency. Was what really like, and maybe there's a psychological thing to this where it just tricks off like the primordial brain, or I know there's the 3 brain model, and Andy and I go off on tangents a lot. Dana, I should have warned you, but
not us.
Ultimately,
Never.
The idea is that once you're kind of anxious about something, right, your higher brain functions are going to, if not shut off, kind of be pushed to the side, and all you have to do is click the link to get your answer or whatever. I mean, it seems like these folks are well versed in this type of psychology.
Yeah, and they also know too that when you're on your mobile, everybody's rush. We're rushing on the mobile phone all the time, and that is a little scary, because sometimes even when you look on the mobile, you can't even see who it's from. It'll just say a name or something. Like even some of the Apple ones that come out, it'll say, oh, it's from Apple, but that's not the exact. Doesn't show you the phone number or whatever it is. It's just what the scammer has put up there as the who it's from kind of thing. So yeah, there's a lot of things we need to all start doing or not doing.
Right. It's an interesting. It's just fascinating that with all this advances in cybersecurity, and I've seen a lot of the things that the technical weeds we're not going to go into. But humans are like the weak link.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the front line to most of the stuff. And, the urgency factor, just to go back to that real quick, one scam that is targeted at seniors is the Grandparent Scam. And so what they do is they will call up and pretend that they're someone's grandson or granddaughter, and something crazy's happened, like they're held hostage in a Mexican jail or something, and they need to have money right away wired to them so that they can, get out of there. So then, to make it even sound more valid, they put the prison guard on the phone, and they say, oh, this is the information, this is where you need to send it to, and he's a very stern person. And these people really do fall for this. And a lot of the people, Western unions around the country, they know that this scam is running rampant, so they'll try to stop people. I did a speech the other day, or whatever, a talk the other day, and there were probably about 1,000 people on there, and nobody said anything when I brought this up. And then at the end, when we had the Q&A, there had to at least be 25 to 50 people that said, my mother fell for this, and she would not believe that it wasn't my son. Another one said that the scam was that they said that their grandson was had drugs in the car and was with some guy that he was going fishing with, and it was just one after the next. And a lot of the time, the seniors won't even admit that this happens because they're embarrassed by it.
Sure. And
then they're afraid that their adult children, are not going to let them manage their finances. So again, it's a whole play on urgency, play on emotion, and you're not even thinking straight. I mean, if somebody came up to you and said, your grandson is in a Mexican jail right now, and we need you to give money, you stop and think a little bit. But the way we act online is very different than the way we act when we're here. The way we act on the phone, when somebody calls, we want to believe them, then we would act as if they were standing in front of us. So that's kind of some of the awareness that I like to spread, is to say, just ask yourself, if this person was standing here and this conversation was happening, would it sound crazy?
Right. So Dana, we talked a lot about the problem, and how do we make ourselves shift gears like that? How do we engage mentally in a way that maybe defeats this urgency?
Well, cybersecurity training has been, going on over the years. The problem is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're throwing more and more money at it, and it's not getting any better, right?
Yeah.
So I say we need to approach it. I look at things a little bit differently. So usually it's the IT department that's responsible for putting together a program to teach the regular non-technical people, what they need to do and not do. So they're forced to sit through an hour's worth of training. They're about to fall asleep. All they want to do is be able to get through it so they can check off the box that they actually went. They did it. That's it. And I don't think that's the best way to teach people. Okay. What I think we should do is we should start teaching them how they can protect themselves, their families, their homes, because then there's going to get some interest. They're going to say, hey, I better call my mother and tell her to watch out for that, or I better make sure my son's not doing that. And there's a buy-in there. So now once you get that buy-in, there's an awareness that we need to start protecting things. And then when you're talking about at the company, you've already educated them on how they should be looking at their emails. Then now they know how that they need to be looking at the emails of the company, because email is pretty much where most of the problems are starting from. So I just think if we looked at it a little bit differently, maybe we would be getting through to people a little bit differently.
Well, I like your approach, because we've already kind of walked through a lot of this, and we've said that it's not a technical issue at all. And being an IT person, and Frank Frank admitted earlier that we're high functioning, savants, basically. Frank and I are. We're both ADD, and and
not enough to count cards in Vegas, though.
Not that
which I
good.
totally feel cheated. I'm sorry. Sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay. It was funny. But having when you were just describing that, I was imagining people that even myself and Frank doing this, and we're, like I said, kind of high functioning, but normal IT people, and nothing against normal IT people. I love you. I mean it. But having them try to explain something non-technical, because if we've identified that the issue is not really a technical problem, and we've thrown money at it and bought, developed software that others have built and all of that, really what's happening here is very psychological. So I would think that approach you just described, having a non-technical person walk through this, which sounds to me very emotional scenario that comes at you, on people you love, and urgency, and it's on your phone, and it's like every card that the scammers have is being played against, especially older people who are not not as familiar with the technology as some of us.
Absolutely. So I just think it's a different way to approach things, and it comes across as if you're giving the employee a benefit as opposed to forcing them to sit down because you need to protect the company. Oh, okay, great.
Right.
That's what I have to do, kind of thing. So
we all
just
have to
had that
those,
vision.
Mandatory training. Sorry.
Yeah, I just had that vision of Office Space of, is this good for the company? The big banner.
Friday is Crazy Shirt Day. There's our movie reference for the show, Andy.
I
don't have my soundboard.
You don't have your sound? Man.
No, that's one of the disadvantages of switching to LinkedIn Live. We'll fix it. You know us. We're engineers, Andy. So the question, I guess, is I think what was really insightful was, my wife bought a bunch of of books to study for the CISSP and all that. And it's like it's a book. It's not technical. You're right. I mean, people are the weak link. And I think people, and that whole, like you brought out the whole shame factor. Like, I'm not going to admit, that thing happened to me. I got caught by our internal team. Right. That was a year ago, and I'm just admitting it now, and I did that on purpose because, I didn't hide it on purpose. Well, I guess I did, but I wanted to point out is that there's not a lot of shame. I mean, the shame of this, I think, is a big barrier, isn't it, to protection, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely it is. We all have to get over that. Oh my goodness, I don't want to be the one that, took the company down, or I don't want to be the one that, did this or let this in, or whatever the case may be. It's definitely a shame factor is a big thing, and recognizing that the people are the biggest thing. And one thing is that cybersecurity training, right? So it's going on a little bit here and there. The big companies, much more so. Some of the smaller companies and medium-sized companies, there is nothing. It's like the Wild West going on out there. So, whatever you think your secretary is comfortable clicking on, that's what she's clicking on. So that's where we need to say, okay, this is a whole new industry, and it's exploding right now. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, cybersecurity training is going to be everywhere, and everybody, even the small companies, are going to have to do something along those lines. But that being said, so because it's so new, again, going back to the IT department, if you said to anybody 5 years ago, something about cybersecurity, they probably wouldn't even really know what you were talking about. They'd say, you need to talk to the IT department. So It was always just that pass up. Oh, that's an IT thing. We don't get involved in that. It's an IT thing. And like we've all just been talking about, it's not. It's the people. The IT thing might be perfect. Maybe they have the firewalls or whatever that stuff they need to do, but it's the people are just clicking on and downloading things. You're going nowhere.
No, that's true. I mean, you can have the best firewall and all that packets locked down to the teeth, but if somebody behind a firewall clicks on clicks on the link. There you go. It's kind of like, if you want to imagine, like, this is the image I have is, well, first off, I think the problem might be the term cybersecurity, right? Because when you hear the term cybersecurity, I think of like somebody like with this type of monitor set up, you know, like,
yeah, right.
you know, like hacking away at the Matrix or something like that. Like,
yeah.
but you know, it's not. It doesn't have to be. I mean, there's a whole cottage industry of folks, and I don't think people realize. I mean, bad actors are everywhere, but the phone connects you to the people down the street, but it connects you to the people on the other side of the planet. And the cost to send out these emails is nothing. The cost to make a phone call these days, even internationally, is low. There was a story I heard about a bunch of folks had basically pulled off the largest bank heist in history. I don't know the details. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. But basically, it was involved about coordinated attack of 50 people with cloned ATM cards. And they hit all the banks in about the span of like 20, 30 minutes, like max out each card. And they had like 5 different cards.
Wow.
And I forget what their ultimate take was, but I mean, it was maybe not the largest bank heist in history, but I mean, it was respectable, like 24 million. No alarms went off, no sirens went off. By the time that they had realized that they were robbed, it already happened.
Yeah, and even with like this, you know, some of the social engineering that goes on with, let's say, an office manager or somebody who's in charge of cutting the checks, you know, that person, they're getting an email. This happened to Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. So, you know, they were doing business with this company in Germany, building some hotels, and somebody was in there. Some scammer got into the system, was just watching the communications back and forth. They start to pick up on the type of language you use, the way you type your emails, what logos look like, what emails look like. And then at the very right time, they sent an invoice for $400,000 for quote unquote furniture. So the office manager paid it and then contacted Barbara's assistant to let her know. And it turned out that it was a Chinese IP address and that the email address was off by 1 little digit. So I did a video. I think I did a video or a post on that. I'm not sure which one, but somebody did say to me that they were able to get that money back. I was very surprised at that. I was under the impression that they lost it, but it's stuff like that too. That's just this, you know, somebody shooting an email. Hey, by the way, you know, here's the invoice for that. Looks like the same invoices. You're not even questioning it. You know, you're doing business with this company. So that's another thing too.
That's nefarious. Like, it's just amazing that I mean, the ingenuity that these people deploy. It's not, maybe the problem's in, I mean, well, the problem is in our heads, but in the sense that, you know, we can fall for these things, but in the sense of when you think cybersecurity, I instantly think of the hacker and like securing the firewall and the packets. But if you run an organization or even just in your family, you know, my mom is not technical, right? That's not her thing. And she would, you know, she's fallen for stuff. And one of the tactics that's fallen out of favor lately was a random call where they call from the support desk. They call from Microsoft. That's one of my favorite ones because I can mess with them. You know, and there's lots of stories about, you know, people call, you know, they call and say, you know, they basically pull up a part of your computer that's going to throw a lot of errors anyway, right? And they say, oh, you're infected with a virus. You got to do this. And, I remember the one time I messed with them, they're like, oh yeah. Well, I'm like, well, I don't have a Windows PC. And they're like, oh, whoa, it must've been your Mac. I was like, well, I don't have a Mac either. And then he's like, oh, you're lying. You have to have a Mac or a PC. I was like, he goes, what computer do you have? And I said, I have Linux. And then he hung up immediately. I guess the assumption is if you know how to run Linux,
you must know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it should probably run away. He probably had like a sheet on his thing, like if they say this, say this, and like.
I'm doing some research right now, and there's a guy on YouTube. His name is Jim Browning, and he has a page called Tech Support Scams. He's got millions and millions of followers and everything, and he is really, really a technical person. So he can do the same thing as you guys can do. He can play with those scammers and actually like get into the system. He was able to hack into the circuit, the closed circuit TV of where in India that they were all in there, and he could see exactly what they were doing. It was crazy. So if anybody gets a chance, you might want to take a look at that on YouTube. I'm going to definitely be incorporating that. I'm putting together some courses.
Oh, cool.
For people to go look at that because he's got hands-on, like really, And you can hear exactly what they're saying. Same thing you just said, Microsoft, and they're playing around and they put something on the screen so that you're seeing a black screen and they're seeing everything on your screen that you don't even know what's happening. So regular people just don't understand all that stuff. So that's another reason why I try to make sure all my videos are very, very plain language, because all of us, as soon as we start getting overwhelmed or intimidated by language, we just shut down. So now we're not learning anything, because now just when is this going to be over? That's all we're thinking of. So, but if you can kind of process it, visualize something along the way that I could see that happening. Okay, I could see that solution working.
Well, it starts sounding like Charlie Brown's parents, you know.
Yeah.
Like first, you know, so and so is working at their desk, and then wah 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 wah.
Right.
You know, shout out to the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special. I figure I'd make it timely. So you mentioned courses. So like what do you do specifically to kind of like combat this? Because it seems like that's your mission.
Yeah, so it started out with the employee training, which I do some of the employee training, but also I've had a lot of people sending me requests for just some regular people training that maybe they could have their parent watch, maybe they could have, you know, I talk about kids and social media safety and all that kind of stuff. That's just another disaster that's going on. But, you know, some people, they just want to know, how do I kind of somehow navigate these waters? I don't know anything, and I need to learn a little bit about something, learning about, you know, organizing your documents, even the mailbox. I talk about the mailbox. You need to empty the mailbox and, you know, know what's going on in there and know if something's missing. So there's free tools that you can use, and stop getting pre-approved credit cards. You can get rid of that. And then if you ever need a credit card, you can always, you know, get one back on, turn it back on so that you'll start receiving them.
So to be clear, when you say mailbox, you mean the actual physical mailbox that snail mail goes. Okay, because most of our audience are engineers, and they're immediately thinking Outlook or Gmail, right?
This is the old-fashioned one at the end of the driveway. That one that people were like, oh, I don't need to empty it every single day. Oh, you know, it's a big deal. It is a big deal. So we start talking about that. Then going into some of these phone scams that are happening, emails, what to look for in some of those emails. You know, a lot of people don't know, if you hover over the link, it's going to show you, you know, where it's going, making sure you're looking at the email. If you have an email that says it's from Amazon or FedEx, and then you look up there and the email address is Comcast. I mean, these are little things that normal people, they just don't know to look for. So it's basic stuff about that. And then even, you know, look at, everybody's always logged into Google, right? Most of us right now are probably logged into Google on our phone and on our desktop. And most people don't know that the three little dots on the right-hand side of the browser, if you click on that, you can see all the autofilled pre-saved passwords and all the autofilled pre-saved credit card payments or debit card payments. So, you know, you get Gmail 20 years ago or whatever, 15 years ago, and you made some password up. It's probably the same password that you have for every single other thing that's out there. And you use the same email and the same password for every account. So if that's been involved in a data breach, someone can get into your Gmail, and that's a little bit scary.
There was a the password seemed like the neck. Like, so if you wanted to draw like a diagram, and I don't have my fancy little drawing thing here, so people seem to be the first line of defense, and the second one would be, I guess it's people related. So passwords, you know, like it's easy to figure out. Was it the movie Sneakers or Hackers, where they were like, well, what's his anniversary? Like, what's his birthday? What's his kid's birthday? Like, it's easy to figure that stuff out. Mm-hmm. But I mean, with some of these password breaches, they can just kind of do that and figure out a password. And the chances are, like you said, and this is the big no-no, at least that's what I'm taking away. The big no-no is don't have the same password for all these different things, because you basically expose yourself.
Right, exactly. So I always use this little example. You know, this is the other thing that's very sad. There's huge data breaches, millions and millions of bits of records or data or whatever. Every single day this is happening, and we're numb to them. We're like, oh, another data breach, another data breach. And that's a lot of personal information that's now out there for anybody to get their hands on.
Right.
So I use Grubhub, for example. It's a small food delivery service. So they got hacked, username, password. So people think, oh, what's the big deal? It's just my username and password. But if you're using the same email as your username and the same password for all of your accounts, your Facebook account, your Chase Bank, your Bank of America, your whatever, and they can just, and they do, they try and they try and they try and they try, and eventually they can get in. So that's the number one danger with making sure that the password is the same. You definitely don't want to have that. I try to suggest to people, because they freak out when I tell them they should have a different password for every account. That's just like the cuckoo light goes off. So I say, well, have a passphrase, and then you remember the passphrase, and then the only thing that changes in every single password is the last bit. So let's say it's Mary Had a Little Lamb, LinkedIn, 1985, exclamation point. And then my Chase one's going to be Mary Had a Little Lamb, Chase, 1985 exclamation point. So now the only thing you need to remember is what account it is and whatever that extra little jazz you put at the end of it. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of say, okay, I can do this. I can do this.
What are your thoughts on like password managers? I'm sorry, Andy, I cut you off.
I was going to ask the exact same question.
Well, I think it's the comfort level of people. I mean, you're taking somebody that's had the same password for 15 years, and now you're telling them that they're going to send it off to somebody else, and the first thing they typically think is, well, now what if they get hacked? You know, what am I going to do? And
right.
Obviously, a lot of different password managers. Some store the information on the device. Some store it. I have like this one, Stash Pass. They want me to try this out. It's like a little extra card that you just touch the phone and then it will give you the password. Some of them send it to the cloud. But so again, they're great if you're comfortable with them. But a lot of people like, you know, it's like, well, okay, let's do something versus, oh, wait, now I got to go figure out which one to sign up for. And they overcomplicate everything. So now they're just not doing it. And done is better than perfect. So we say with this.
That's true. I like that mentality because you're right. I mean, perfect is an excuse not to get anything done. Really, is right. The end result.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we actually have some comments. This is one of the advantage. I don't know if you can see that, Dana. So you are the first guest we've done this live. Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is crazy. That Nigerian Prince scam, the 419 scams, and some of them have actually gotten more outlandish over time. There was a story about an email going around that there was a Nigerian prince stuck on the International Space Station and he had to I'm not making this up, and that you had to wire money to the Russian government or to get him down or something like that. And you know, our first reaction is like, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
But then somebody I was talking to who was in this field, he's like, no, it's brilliant because you've already isolated people who are going to fall or who are not going to fall for it. They're just going to laugh. But, you know, 1 in a million. And if you send an email out to 10 million people, if 10 people send you $250,000 or whatever it is, you walk away with a nice chunk of change.
Yeah. And you know what else is really sad too, is that when people do fall for these scams, either the phone scams or the email scams, then they get put on a list of suckers. That's the list they're on. And then that list is all over the place. So then they're going to get scammed again because everyone's like, whoo, we got a hot one here. And then someone else is going to go try their whatever shtick is.
And the shame, I guess, because it's just so ridiculous. Oh, man. Yeah. Shame is a big part of their mechanism, isn't it?
It definitely, especially with the seniors, which is just so sad. It really is so sad.
That is a shame.
So your opinion then about people who do mess with them. I've seen some YouTube videos where someone gets called and it's an IRS scam and they're about to come and arrest, and a warrant has been issued and there's 2 or 3 people involved. What do you think of those people that kind of play along and draw them out?
Well, I mean, I guess if you want to, you know, if you're savvy enough to be able to play with them and, you know, kind of do that, you know, if you want to have fun with them, have fun with them. You know, some people tell me they do shoot air horns into the thing. They just put the phone down for hours, you know, whatever. But when it comes to the real people that are really at risk, they really just need to, you know, get off the phone. And they also need to understand, too, the government agencies are not going to call you. Not going to call you, but these scammers, they'll spoof the phone number. So it does say it's the IRS. So you're saying, oh, the IRS is calling. And then you answer the phone and then they're telling you all this crazy talk. And then they actually believe them. I had one guy who messaged me. He said that his mom got a call from the IRS, right? And said that she was going to jail. She had gone and packed her suitcase and was calling her son to say, I'm going to be down at the prison. You need to come pick me up or help me get out. And the son was at work like, what, Mom, what are you talking about?
Wow. So I've heard the FCC is looking into some legislation, especially about the spoofing and for calls like that. Any thoughts on that or any updates on it? I just kind of heard it in passing.
Well, I think the issue is that these phone numbers, they go through phone numbers, you know, like water. So it's not like they have one line that they're calling over and over and over again. I mean, that number, most of the times, if you ever tried to call it back, it just goes to nowhere now.
Well, there's also the matter of if they're out of the country, like what can they do? I mean, it becomes like this whack-a-mole, like you said, like shut down this phone number. 10 minutes later, they're on another number. I mean, it just seems like the best offense is a good defense, I guess, is flipping that phrase around in the sense of, you know, well-trained people. So what types of organizations do you work with? Obviously, I work for a large company, and there's a whole video on YouTube about the red team and blue team and what they do and all that. But Andy, it looks like you're in the witness protection program.
Oh yes, I'm hiding out.
But what were like, the plumber down the street, or like, the small business, and I really wonder, like, God bless Barbara Corcoran for getting her money back, but if she wasn't Barbara Corcoran,
right? Yeah, exactly.
What would the banks have said? The banks would have been like, not our problem,
Yep, there was a company in Connecticut, and they were building things for this company out in Colorado. So they're building it, they're sending, and same thing, communicating back and forth. So the Colorado company, somebody sent a fake invoice, so they paid it. It was $70,000, and these were both, smaller size businesses. That's a lot of money for a smaller size business. So
Right.
they had paid it. It was gone. So now the people who were doing the building, they're like, well, you still owe us $70,000. And that's what you have to be careful of looking into your insurance policies as to what's going to be covered and what's not going to be covered, because that's a very sensitive area right now. They're trying to toss it off into, well, that's just going to be under the cyber liability insurance policy instead of just a regular insurance policy. So I would suggest any small business look into that and see, well, what if that did happen? What would be covered? And then also just make sure you open up the lines of communication with whoever is sending money. You need to double check somehow, some way, every time you're going to wire money with someone else through a secure way, and then make sure that it's a legitimate request that someone is sending.
Interesting. Well, I noticed at whenever you see a Western Union sign or a Western Union office, there's a huge sign in multiple languages saying, don't send money to people you don't know. And,
Right.
like, I wonder how effective that signage has been, because at that point, if you're scared and you're thinking about your loved one that's trapped, in a foreign country, in a foreign jail, like, do you realize, like, I mean, this is really kind of a question no one can really answer. Do people look at that and think, well, that's not happening here? Like, I mean, I don't know.
Rationale is completely out the window. I mean, another thing is like these romance scams. This is really sad. So, these poor people, online dating is kind of a new thing. Maybe they somehow start communicating with somebody. And, everybody's a little lonely these days with this whole COVID thing and everybody being isolated. So that's really not helped anything. So they're typing away and back and forth communication. They feel like they're establishing a relationship with somebody. For whatever reason, that other person is never able to go on like a Zoom or a FaceTime or anything like that. They can only type. They can't talk on the phone. They can just type. So these poor people, when they fall victim to this, they message me, and I feel terrible for them. I sometimes get on the phone with them, and I'm like, listen, you can't beat yourself up. This has happened to quite a few people. And some of the stories are so ridiculous to me. They're so ridiculous, but this person is emotionally invested in this relationship that they had. And then it will typically go, whatever is going on, great. They check in every day. One lady had prayer time every day with this person. And then all of a sudden it's, well, can you do me a favor? Of course I can do you a favor. We have this relationship now. I want to help you. And then it's some financial request that they're asking. And then they promise, they're so embarrassed. And I promise I'll pay you back, as soon as I can. And then the person takes the money and is never to be found again. So that's really, really sad, because the person's not only heartbroken and mortified, they're out their money. And those are a lot of the ones that they don't tell people about, because they really are just so embarrassed by the whole thing.
That's a real shame. I mean, that's a shame. Like you said, shame on more than one level.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned COVID. COVID has been, and we were talking in the virtual green room, COVID has been a big boon for these folks, right? I mean, like they've done pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds terrible the way I say that,
Yeah,
but I mean,
I know, but I get it. Yep.
They really monetized COVID, or just took advantage of that. So what?
And again, the same thing with those poor people that fell victim to the romance scams. They're now on the list of the romance scam suckers. So now somebody else is, tries to create a relationship with them, and nobody ever thinks that's going to happen twice to them. It's terrible.
Wow. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, like, so what can the average person do, particularly in line of like all the online shopping that's going to take place in the next 3 to 4 weeks? What and there's a lot of DL sites. There's a lot of plugins that you install in the browser to get a better deal on Amazon or this or that. Some of those plugins could be sketchy.
Yeah. And you got to remember, every time you're doing one of those things, it's data they're collecting from you. Data,
Right.
data. That's what everybody wants, is your data, so that they can go turn around and send and sell that data. So those plugins that, they're under the guise of, oh, we're going to save you money, we're going to give you extra coupons, happy. And every regular person is just like, oh, this sounds good, let me put it on there. So they're putting those on there. But as far as holiday shopping, my biggest thing is they get delivered to the house, right? Everyone's shopping online now. So now these emails, these scam emails that are coming in, they look really good. The days of the text of the Nigerian prince, those are out the window. These are ones that are coming from FedEx or Amazon or UPS, and they look good. And it's about your delivery, or it's about you need to update your payment information. So they want you somehow to be clicking on something and then entering in some kind of personal information. So I always suggest to people, if you ordered something, let's say it is from Amazon, go to your Amazon account, not through clicking. Go to Amazon.com, log into your account, and then you can see if there really is a situation that's happening.
It's funny you mentioned that. It actually happened to me. I got this email that looked very legit, looked like an Amazon kind of order confirmation, that I sent somebody a TV. I bought somebody a TV in Florida, like a $6,000 TV and a PlayStation and an Xbox in Florida.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I didn't.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I don't buy that for myself.
Right.
I'm not going to buy it for anyone else. So then my first instinct was to click on the thing, and I'm like, no, wait a minute now. And then I hovered over it because I was on my laptop, not driving. I was like, it went to something. It was like something Amazon dot something else.com. And I was like, oh, look at this. But the first thing I did, just to be safe, is I go into another browser, looked at my real Amazon account, and it's like, there's nothing in my order history. All right. Then my heart rate went down. And then I called over my older son. I was like, hey, let me show you something. Because you got to see this.
Yeah. And if your audience is all very technical people, they probably do know a lot of these things, but that doesn't mean that their kids or their spouses or their parents or whatever.
Right.
So, even if you know it, let's get the conversations going so more people are talking about this stuff.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the idea, the kind of grassroots education, if you will. And
I think it's the only way this is going to be able to spread itself, unless you get, 100 million of me that are regular people that are going around and just talking to everybody in very non-technical terms. We have to help each other learn.
Right. I like that. That's something Andy and I do a lot with that, like, helping each other, right? Because that's just helping educate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you did mention you have courses, like, so what do you do? Like, what sorts of organizations do you work with? I might have asked you this already.
As far as the online webinars and stuff like that, those are for a lot of big corporations that, again, they're regular people. They may be a technical company, but they're regular staff. They're the ones, and it's all the stuff we've just been talking about. That we'll sit down and we'll do a webinar and then have a nice question and answer session afterwards, and then it's recorded if other employees want to watch it. The courses I was talking about, those are the ones that I'm putting together for the regular people. I'm not supposed to talk about it because it's supposed to be my big announcement for the end of the month, but okay, there it is.
We won't tell anybody. It's our secret.
Anyone.
That's right. So how can people learn more about you and what you do, and how can they find your business and your services?
Well, I'm always on LinkedIn. I tell everybody that, and I'd love to connect with you. So if you're on LinkedIn, just send me a connection request, and then you can see all my crazy videos. And then they can also go to my website, which
they're fun. They're fun. You totally should watch them. It's like I never thought cybersecurity, and although that term, I didn't think it would be funny and entertaining. Like, she makes it funny.
Well, and that's the thing. People say, "Oh, you have such a fun topic." I'm like, "No, I don't."
Well, kudos to you, though. Like, you made something that most people, they have to go to security training. I'm sure every large Fortune 500 has this whole security thing, and like, no one looks like I'm in the technology industry, and I don't look forward to that, right? Like,
no, but yeah.
But you make little videos that are like, I don't know. I don't know what your traffic numbers, but I'm assuming they go viral in some degree.
Yeah, I built quite a little audience, and it's funny because when I first started doing them, this was a big leap. This is a very serious business, identity theft and cybercrime, right? So I didn't want the videos to come off as people looking and saying, "What's wrong with this woman? What is she doing?" Right. But what I wanted to do was take one specific topic that I break down, and then try to add a little humor, and then off it goes. So at the beginning, it really didn't get a lot of traction.
Right. Well, if you're not I mean, there's something to be said for it. Like, if you're not getting that kind of reaction at first, you're not being innovative enough. I mean, there's a number of people we listen to, Andy and I listen to, kind of maybe even obsessively, like the Grant Cardones of the world, the Ty Lopez's of the world. Each one of those guys is an acquired taste, but that's kind of their core message is on point. So we had a comment from Thomas. What are your thoughts about, you think, credit providers that provide to protective service?
That was a follow-up from his previous comment.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. I don't know if this is what Thomas meant, but I'll tell you what.
Here's the first one. It looks like it's the first one said, if this is the first one, usually my credit card is calling me on charges like that. American Express, USA have been really good about this. And then it looks like it was aligning credit providers. I don't really understand that part of the question. But
so as I understood it, it seems like if it's in the best interest of the credit card companies and insurance companies to make this education more widely known.
Yes. And this is what I always talk about when I talk about a credit card versus a debit card. And I tell people you should use a credit card as much as you possibly can and use that debit card as little as possible, because the credit card company, that's why they're watching out for that, because that's their money that's being spent and fraudulently charged or whatever. So the quicker that they can detect it and maybe undo something, the better off they are. But when you have a debit card, if there's fraudulent activity, that's coming right out of your account. And depending upon your bank, which everybody should check to see what the policy is with how many days have gone by, how much they'll reimburse that. And sometimes after, let's say it's 60 days, that you're not getting that money back. So it's a line of defense. And I know people get a little upset with me saying, oh, people are not disciplined enough to use credit cards. And if you are, and you pay that off every single month, if you could stay in that discipline, you're much safer having a credit card than using a debit card.
Interesting. Yeah. And a lot of the fraud detection algorithms and stuff like that were pioneered at a lot of these credit card companies. Some of the best data scientists in the world, they work at these credit card companies to look for fraudulent transactions. And they're pretty good. I mean, they only, I've had them call me. I've had them lock out the card. They were wrong once.
Yeah, it is most of the time. One time I had to go buy a whole bunch of iPads, which I never do. This is a few years ago. So I got a call on that, which that made sense I get a call on that because that's not something I would normally do.
Right. It was interesting. For me, it was a vending machine at IKEA that triggered the thing. Because it didn't work. I don't know what happened. I part of it was one of my kids was swiping it and it was swiped multiple times or something like that. I think that's what triggered it. But yeah, sidetrack. It's what we do, Dana. It's what we do.
Okay.
And your URL is what?
identityprotectionplanning.com.
Okay, cool. We'll definitely make sure that's in the show notes.
Yep.
One of the things we always ask is, do you listen to audiobooks?
Yes, I do.
Cool. Do you have a recommendation of a favorite book?
I do, but I also have an old book. I'm sure it's on Audible somewhere, but I think it's very appropriate for everything that we're all going through with COVID. It's the Who Moved My Cheese book, which is at least 15 years old, but just talking about adapting to a whole new circumstance that you want it to go back to the way that it was as much as you possibly can, but it's not going to. So it's all about learning how to force yourself to adapt to the new environment. So if that one's not on there, but I also like Gary V. I'm a big Gary V.
Oh,
fan.
yes.
Yeah. So his Crush It and Crushing It and all the ones that he's got on there. I love
with your content. I see it now. That's brilliant. I was going to say, like, it's some of the things you had said about doing the content and kind of breaking it down. I'm like, that's very Gary V-ish.
Yeah, and even just throwing yourself out there. I mean, for months, I went back on LinkedIn because he said, LinkedIn is going to be kind of a new big thing for businesses, which made sense because everybody signed up for it about 15 years ago, and then nobody went on it until we all kind of came back, or we're starting to come back over the last couple of years. So then I watched people's stuff, and I watched Shay Rowbottom, who I love Shay. And she was the only one doing videos on there. This is about probably 2 years ago.
Right.
And he was like, listen, you guys, you got to throw yourselves out there. You're not going to know unless you actually do. And then I said, all right, well, I got to give this a whirl. And then it was even worse because I did, and then I didn't get any like. I thought, all right, well, I'm going to keep going on this for 6 months. And if I don't get any traction, then I'm probably going to pack it up here.
Right. But how long did it take to get traction?
I would say probably about 6 months is when it did, and then a little bit after that is when I went through Shay's boot camp, and that was very, very helpful to teach me
Oh,
how to
really?
set up videos and the ways to lay them out. So then I really my videos I think got a little bit more professional looking. So that was very, very helpful. So that was about a year and a half ago, I think. So
Cool. No, that's definitely good to know. Shay Rowbottom stuff is also very entertaining on LinkedIn as well. It's interesting to see kind of the medium of LinkedIn. Again, full disclosure, they're owned by Microsoft, who pays my mortgage.
yeah.
No, I've noticed that too. Like I've been on YouTube since 2013. One of my, I'll come out there with my other big shame, right? Like, is like how horrible my subscription numbers are, right? I have now I'm at like 350 subscribers, right? Yay me! But
I'm the same on YouTube. I think I have 3 subscribers. I don't even know.
well, I'll make sure to subscribe to you there. But no, I mean, like, just I actually, the ironic thing is that because we do these live streams, because I'd get more engagement on LinkedIn, I would do more live streams, which using either Restream or the one with the duck StreamYard.
Yeah.
I would just hey, why not, right?
Yeah.
And I'm actually seeing my YouTube numbers go up, and maybe I mean the problem probably was me. I wasn't publishing enough. I wasn't publishing enough interesting stuff, and you know, I think just fascinating. We could sidetrack on this all day, but we want to be respectful of your time. Definitely want to talk to you offline about kind of the Shay Rowbottom stuff, because she's crushing it.
Yep.
Audible is a sponsor of the show, so if you go to thedatadrivenbook.com, it'll route you to Audible, and if you get a subscription, we get a bit of a cutback. We get a bit of a little, you know, enough to buy a Starbucks probably. But we are looking for creative ways to monetize the show. We have a couple other projects kind of in the pipeline. New shirt design, Andy. New T-shirt design.
Yes, saw that.
The
Excellent. Datalorian. Yes.
So I know, right? Like, so we have a T-shirt merch shop on Amazon, and one of the designs actually was a guy fishing. And it was like I bought like a bunch of pre-made designs for some of them, and I changed it from fishing to PH fishing. Funny story. So one of my kids, my older, he's now 10, but when he was like 3 or 4, I'm not an outdoorsy guy. I grew up in New York City, right? He comes to me and says, "Daddy, I want to go fishing," and I'm thinking, dude, stealing money from people is. Oh, you meant okay.
That's funny.
And then when my younger son, he was about the same age now. He's like, "Daddy, I want to go fishing. I want to get it." And I'm like, "I want to go fishing," and I just thought to myself, I was like, "That's funny. I know what he's talking about now." Like, again with the sidetrack, I've started listening to a new audiobook. This is what we usually do at the end of the thing. We'll talk about an audiobook that's called The Mathematics of Life and Death. Very fascinating discussion on false positives, false negatives, cancer screenings. It's just like, it's very thought-provoking. There was this whole chapter about how cancer screenings, like, you know, if you do kind of this mass market of like as many people as possible, a false positive is very nerve-wracking for the person. But if it brings in more people to get more advanced diagnostic testing, that's a good thing. And it talks about the ethics of it. It's very fascinating in terms of how numbers can be. Yeah. And it was on sale for like $3 one day. So that's how I picked it.
Nice. I'm listening to Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dana, for being on the show. We'll definitely make sure we get all your information we can put in the show notes. And everyone out there, thanks for joining. I see Thomas has said thank you and have a happy Turkey Day. Same to you. Same to you, everyone out there in LinkedIn land, YouTube land. I think we're on everywhere but Instagram, but we'll fix that at some point in the future. Thanks for your time. And if you're listening to this on the recording, we'll let the British lady end the show. Awesome. Thanks, Dana. That was brilliant. That was cool.
That was awesome.
That was really fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. No problem. Thanks for being on here. And definitely I'll talk to you offline about some of the video stuff, because I see what Shay's doing and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I see now I can kind of see like, yeah, that's brilliant. Like what you've done with that is brilliant.
Thank you.
So cool. All right, I'm going to end the stream. There's no unanswered questions. Have a great weekend. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thanks, Dana.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice meeting you, Dana. Thanks.
You too. Bye, guys.